Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome to How and Steve English. In today's video lesson, we are studying Intermediate Book 1, Lesson 5. If you're not sure how to use these video lessons, let me remind you. You can watch these videos or listen to our audio for casual listening practice. If you're preparing for your English class, then use this video to practice the lesson once, twice, or 3 times before class. While watching these videos, make sure you pause during question and answer periods to speak and write down your answers. If you have the lesson files, make sure you print it out so you can take notes and write down answers. If you're just watching the video, make sure you use a pencil and paper or a computer to write down answers. Today's lesson is called What's Beauty? Before we dive into this topic, let's take a look at this picture. What can you see? At this point, you should pause the video and write down and say everything you can see in this picture. You can simply say what you see, and you should also try to say what this picture reminds you of. What story or anecdote can you say from your life based on this picture? So pause the video and give it a go. I'll describe what I can see now. I can see a woman. I can see a woman with long blonde hair. She has gray or light green or light blue eyes. She's not wearing makeup. This reminds me of many of the beauty and body positivity movements in the United States. There are many different movements to make people, especially women, feel positive about their natural bodies and their natural beauty. So this picture reminds me of some of those different time periods. One of them that's very popular is that women don't need to wear makeup. So that's what that reminds me of. Now let's move to our table topic. This is a short, fun conversation question. Before we begin, you should pause the video to write down your answer and speak your answer to this question. Remember, to practice English conversation, you need to speak. So, even if it's awkward and strange, you should try to speak your answers. Even when you're alone and you might feel like it's a little bit strange to speak out loud, you should still do it. What's your ideal type? Do you think you're anybody's ideal type? Well, I guess my ideal type is somebody with a very strong mind, somebody with a lot of empathy, so somebody who can be very understanding of whatever emotions I'm dealing with, somebody who has strong independent opinions. So my ideal type is able to look at a situation, a problem, an incident, or a trend, and make their own opinion of it instead of following what everybody else does. And then for body types, I prefer somebody who is a little bit sporty, so somebody who is physically active and likes physical activity and has a body like a sports player. Do you think you're anybody's ideal type? I'm not sure. Maybe I was somebody's ideal type once upon a time. But maybe I still am. But maybe the amount of people is a smaller amount. Maybe I'm fewer people's ideal type than I was before. Okay. Now create one table topic of your own. So create one interesting conversation question about this topic, about beauty and beauty standards, and You can use this in your English class or when you meet your English conversation partner. If you're not going to class and you're just using these videos on your own, you can ask this conversation question in the YouTube comments below, and Hal or I or one of our students will answer you. Or you can go to our website and leave a comment and we'll answer you. Okay, let's look at our vocabulary for today. These are our new words. Some of them are easy, some of them are difficult. Remember, the goal is that you use these words 20 times in this unit. So in today's conversation, in tomorrow's conversation, maybe in yesterday's conversation, if you studied in advance, you could have used these words. So remember, the goal is to just use these words 20 times. And always keep these vocabulary pages with you and check them off as you use them. The more times you use them, the better you will be at English. Photoshop. Photoshop. To edit an image using computer software. Fashion magazines often Photoshop women to be slimmer. Photoshop is the name of a piece of Adobe software. So it's a noun. But now we often use it as a verb. It means to edit an image using computer software, even if we don't use Photoshop. Fashion magazines often Photoshop women to be slimmer or taller or to have smoother skin. They often Photoshop men to be more muscular or to have softer and fewer wrinkles on their skin. Beauty standard or standard of beauty. Beauty standard or standard of beauty. The ideal of beauty in a particular culture or environment. The Korean standard of beauty and the Spanish standard of beauty are very different. So, the more homogeneous a culture is, meaning the less diversity in a culture, the more uniform or the more singular the standard of beauty usually is. So, Korean culture is very homogeneous. So there's really one ideal type of beauty, one ideal standard of beauty. British culture or American culture is a bit more diverse. So there are many different standards of beauty in different subcultures. Unrealistic. Unrealistic, meaning not realistic. Modern standards of beauty are often unrealistic. If you look at any magazine, you'll see that most of the people are photoshopped. So very literally, actually, really, the standards of beauty that the media, that magazines and movies display to us are not very realistic. They're very unrealistic. Perception. Perception. A thought about something, a mental impression. Hollywood's perception of a great movie is much different than what movie fans enjoy. Fashion magazines' perceptions of beauty standards are very different than the average person's perception of beauty standards. Alluring, alluring, powerfully and mysteriously attractive or fascinating, seductive. Some women think slim men are alluring, while other women prefer muscular men. I think that anything at the grocery store that is 50% discounted is extremely alluring. Even if I don't like the food, I find it too powerfully attractive to turn down. Naive. Naive. Showing a lack of experience, wisdom, or judgment. Only naive people want their husband or wife to be as beautiful as photoshopped models. Naive is a great word, and it's something that you should try to use in conversation as often as you can. because it really captures a basic idea, a basic attribute of so many different people. It means having a lack of wisdom because you lack the experience, or simply a lack of experience. So, a young girl or a young boy in a relationship for the first time is probably very naive. Maybe they think, oh, we're in love and we'll be together forever. But if you have experience with boyfriends or girlfriends, or relationships in general, you'll know that that's a little bit naive. That's not how relationships work. If you had more experience or more wisdom from experience, you would know. Remember, in our conversations, try to use these words as much as possible. Today's idiom: beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Each person can have a unique perception of beauty. My brother and I disagree about my girlfriend. I think she's so beautiful. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe my wife and her friends disagree about me. Maybe they think I'm not such a great catch. Maybe they think I'm a little bit less attractive than other people, but she thinks I'm the best. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You can also use this when talking about art. Sometimes you see a piece of art and you really like it and you spend a lot of money on it, or you put it as your computer screensaver or your phone screensaver, and some people will think, oh, this is so ugly, and you can say, well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Remember to try and use this idiom during conversation. Now here are discussion questions. At this point, you should pause the video and write down your answers below each question. If you're going to class, this is good practice for your conversation time with your other classmates or with your language partner. If you're not going to class and you're just studying with these videos online, make sure you respond to these questions in the YouTube comments or on our website. What is the standard of beauty in your culture? Well, I'm American, so as I told you, America is not a very homogeneous country. It is very diverse. So in different communities, in different generations, in different subcultures, there are many different standards of beauty. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, if you look at the classic images of women in magazines and movie posters, and the type of material, the type of posters you saw in a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, maybe, women were typically a little bit bigger or heavier or wider, and the standard of beauty was maybe a little bit more realistic. But in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, the standard of beauty changed. It seemed that whatever standard the fashion industry used became the standard of beauty everywhere. So tall, slim. But that seemed to just be in the popular culture. In different communities and subcultures, for example, Latin communities, or hip-hop communities, maybe punk rock communities, the standard of beauty is very different. And there are many different things that people desired in women. Now, for men, I don't really know too much, but if we use the same method, we can look at representation of men in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you see that it looks a lot different than men now. Now, I'm not sure if that's accurate, because many of the images in the 50s, 60s, and 70s of men in popular culture and media were not designed with women as the customer in mind. They were designed still with men as the customer in mind. So they were an ideal version of men that would appeal to men. So it would be a picture of an ideal man represent on a razor advertisement or a cologne advertisement that would appeal to men as the customers. So I'm not sure how accurate it is, but since I only know about that, I would guess the standard of beauty before was a tall, slightly muscular man with gelled or slicked back hair and either a suit or a button-up shirt. And now the standard of beauty seems to be based on a much more athletic build. So men I often see are much more muscular and much taller, and they used to be clean shaven, but now many men are represented with full beards or a bit of a short beard. I'm not really an expert on the topic, but that's what it seems to be to me. And it's okay if you're not an expert on the topic. This is English conversation class, so you just need to say your ideas. Is it different than the American standard, Spanish, Japanese? Well, since the standard of beauty that I talked about is American, yes, I think it's a little bit different than Spanish, and I think it's different than Japanese. I've seen a few different articles in popular magazines and a few different papers, research papers when I was in college studying that showed the standard of beauty in different culture were very, very different. And in Japanese culture, I think the standard of beauty was for much slimmer bodies, much smaller frames for women, and still with men, smaller bodies and smaller frames. And I think in Spanish culture, they prefer voluptuous women, so the women were typically bigger. And I think the men, I don't know, but they seemed a lot more handsome than American men. So that's just a superficial opinion about the differences between our different standards of beauty. Do you think your culture has an unrealistic perception of beauty? How about Americans? Well, I'm American, and I think that, yes, we do have an unrealistic perception of beauty. I think maybe around the world there's a really unrealistic perception of beauty in developed countries. I think because of Photoshop, and I think because of the fashion industry and maybe media in general, the standard of beauty has become more and more unrealistic through the years. So the people we see in magazines often are so different than the people we see in real life. What's more important, an attractive face or an attractive body? I think actually an attractive face is the most important attribute for people who want to date or be married or start a relationship. Whenever people meet, I think I read an article actually that an attractive face was the most important attribute for people. It outweighed an attractive body. Could you marry somebody with a miserable attitude if they were also extremely attractive? I don't think I could. There are enough attractive people with good attitudes that I really wouldn't be drawn or allured by somebody who had a miserable attitude if they were extremely attractive. Hopefully my wife would say the same thing. I think if Brad Pitt walked up to her, maybe she would turn him down. But especially if she met Brad Pitt before we started dating, and he was a pretty boring, miserable person, that she would be pretty dissatisfied with him, and she would want somebody with a much more positive outlook on life. The same with me. a relationship, and especially a marriage, is about more than just attractive people or being with somebody attractive. So I really don't think I would marry somebody who had a miserable attitude. Okay. I also think it's pretty naive. That's a very naive perception of relationships. That, oh, an idea of, oh, if they're extremely attractive physically, I want to marry them. Because just looking at a picture and finding somebody physically attractive in a picture or just at a glance is such a small fraction of being attracted to somebody in general. When you meet somebody and you get to know somebody, you really exponentially become more attractive to them based on so many other factors. Okay, that's our lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, read, write, and speak in these question and answer sections so you can prepare for your classes. And if you're not going to class, make sure you leave your answers in the comments section on our YouTube channel or on our website. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more lessons like this.